Cool. And we're live. We're live. All right. So yeah, like I said, this is this is day six and the last and final day of the weekly Cypress workshop. It's been fun to do, and this certainly won't be the last workshop. It definitely won't be the end of the content that I'm releasing. So yeah, let's dig in. So the last in the last in the last day, let me go back to my notes here. So at the end of every session, I always give a take-home challenge, and the take-home challenges are really meant um, to solidify the concepts that were learned, because there's tons of YouTube videos out there, and you learn by practicing ultimately, not just by the video alone. And so I try to help by providing those challenges. So there were a few challenges that I gave you. One was to set up a custom command, and the custom command is for setting up your routes. So if you remember with Cypress, there's full control over the network requests, and the way that control is given is by defining routes. So we actually have, let me increase the size here. So we have um, our here we go. We have our before each in this home spec, which tests the home page of our React app. So this is the real world app provided by Cypress. It's kind of like a Venmo application, and we're just testing this homepage. So so yeah, so we have our home spec, and in a before each we are calling site.server and then these routes. And these routes ultimately give you the, let me get the test up here. So by defining those routes, by assigning them to an alias, you're able to Cypress is able to identify them in the test by this little yellow tag here, but also you're able to wait for requests. And by waiting for those requests, um, we're able to uh, control kind of the readiness of the application, or not so much the readiness, but control the actions that we take so that the application's ready to be interacted with. So so going back to the the take home challenge. So we were going to set up a you were tasked with setting up a custom command, which essentially takes that before each and wraps it up into a setup routes command that then you can um, use in all of your tests. But if you remember from the last session, we if you were there, what we went over um, was global hooks. So just like how we have in our test our before each, let me bring that back up. We can actually, in our support index.js, we can actually have a global before each. And we've already done this with our sign in command. So we created a custom command that enables us to sign into our application, and um, and then we put it in this global hook. So that way, for every test, we execute this command. So this before each applies to every single test because this index.js is loaded for every test, or rather for every spec. Okay, so and then the last thing that you were tasked with was updating all of your tests to use these global hooks that we've set up. We have four different different specs. We have the home spec. We have the My Account spec for testing the My Account page. And really all we're doing there is we're going to the My Account page and we're editing the email address and then saving the results. And then we have a sign in, which of course is signing into the application. And then we have, oops, I just messed that up. And then we have also a sign up spec for signing up a user. So, um, so yeah, so let's go ahead and dig into that. So every at the beginning of every workshop, I actually just review the challenge from before. So we're going to go ahead and actually go through that solution. So if you haven't done it, you'll have the solution here. And then usually after that, we go over some new material. And some of this will be new to some extent, especially if we haven't done the challenge. But this time, because it's the last one, we'll just be doing the review and saying sayonara. Let's uh, let's go ahead and dig in. So in our test in our home spec, we already have the function for setting up our routes, right? Um, oh, I'm sorry, I messed that up. That's my fault. Let's bring that page back up. There we go. So now we're back. Okay. So um, okay. Okay, great. Sorry about that. I missed that in the chat there. So um, all right, great. So we have our home spec, and then we have our before each here. That is for yeah, setting up our routes. So so what we can do is we can actually well, the first thing we'll want to do is actually break this out into its own function, which is really right here. Okay. Then we can take any function and turn it into a custom command. So let's go ahead and go to commands, and we could do Cypress dot commands dot add, and we can do set up routes like this. Oops. And then we'll do set up routes. And we need to define that function. So we'll do set up routes just like that. And we'll go to here, and we can actually just take this and move it into there. Okay, so there are our routes ready to go. So now if I go in here, I can actually take this guy out. Sorry, not that part, this part. And then I could do sci dot set up routes. And then let's go ahead and save that and save this and see how it turned out. Oh, looks like I got a little see, where did I mess up? Just missing something here. Let's see. Where did online 44? Oh, I see. So just right here. That's where I messed up. Okay. Okay, we don't need to run all of those. We can actually just go here and see that our routes got set up right here. So we don't need that before each. I mean, um, we don't need the full code. We can just use that command. So now the next piece is actually taking this and making uh, a global hook out of it. So we can go here and we'll put in before each, and we'll do set up routes. And we'll do sci dot set up routes, just like that. Okay, and then we go here, and we can actually remove that. And then we can go back to our spec, and same thing happens. So we still are running our, or rather declaring our routes, setting those up. And of course, we're also signing in as well there. All right, before each test. Um, so one of the things that I recommend to kind of keep things organized is to create what I call support modules. So inside of here, we have our support folder that has index, and I have this auth.js, and this is where the sign in function goes. And of course, I've got nice documentation, and I've got all the room to kind of spread out, right? And it doesn't crowd this commands.js file. So, and then of course, if I have a lot of commands and all of the functions are within this commands.js, as our as we kind of scale, things will kind of get a little bit unwieldy, and so being able to find you'll be able to find things more easily by creating separate modules. So let's go ahead and create a, let's see, we'll call it a routes.js. And we'll take our command right here, or rather the function for it. We'll go to routes and we'll just do export. Okay, and then we can go to we can go here, import that, just like we're doing with sign in. So import, setup. Okay. And then let's save. I love how Cypress watches everything for you so that it can rerun the tests and make sure, so that you can make sure everything is still working, nothing's broken, right? And there we go. We have our routes sign in working just like we expect. All right. So let's see. We talked about setting up the setup routes command and importing it from module. and we took that command and put it into a global hook. Now, remember, um, that you don't have to create a command. You certainly don't have to do that in our in our global before each here. We could certainly just put that code right in this before each, just like it was the the test level originally. You don't have to do that. I'm simply showing how to create commands, so that if every need is different, but if you need to execute that in throughout your tests, then it kind of packages it up nicely so that it keeps your tests maintainable and readable. So yeah, you can just use plain JavaScript in any part of your Cypress project. You're not, nothing needs to be kind of, wrapped up or anything. Um, as long as you understand how, promises work for the most part, and that, the synchronous code's going to be executed first, then you'll be just fine. So yeah, so that's that. We just yeah, we set up those custom commands so that um, so that we know how to set up commands, but um, it's up to you to decide whether that's the best solution. So yeah, so like case in point, if we go to this where's our home spec? Uh, in total, if we bring back this sign in here, and it looks like I don't have the latest code because we turned this into a, oh no, we just didn't apply this yet. Anyway, if I were to just undo all of this, right, we're up to 85 lines. But if I remove these two, now we're down to 47 lines, um, for this whole thing. So there's a good amount of space on the spec just by that setup that's there. So it really helps to pull some of that out um, when you can. All right. So let's see if we go to sign in. Let's go ahead and um, okay. Whoops. Let me grab that again because I wasn't paying attention. Okay. So let me grab this and yeah, I can take. Okay, so I have the global hook for this, so I can get rid of that. Now I don't want to get rid of this whole thing because so this is the code that is this part is what sign in is doing, but we don't want to get rid of this visit piece here because we still need to go home. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to navigate to home, just like that. All right, great. And then let's go ahead and save that. And make sure it's still sane. Okay, cool. Everything looks good there. All right. Okay, let's see. We've got, oh, that's right. So this data object, so um, I don't like to put any of the test data into the tests themselves. I like to encapsulate them into a data object at the top of um, my specs, or even at the test level. And that's just so I have a little bit more control over it. And if I want to change the data that's going into a test or a spec, I can do that in one place, and it doesn't get messy. Now, previously we actually set up a. Let me see where is it here? There it is. So we set up in our Cypress JSON, we set up this env um, object with the username and password inside of it. A lot of times we want a little bit more control over that. We want to be able to say we're testing on a different environment that has different credentials, or we want to handle those credentials differently. Let's just say we're testing on production and we want to, we don't want to commit that to source control. We can actually put it in this environment variable, and then say for example in on your CI server, if you set your environment variable with that password, then Cypress can pick up on that. Okay, so in here we're gonna change this to account for that. So we have cypress.env, and we're gonna say username for that, and then this same thing. Well, almost. And then password. Okay. Now, what about this full name? So this full name is what's used down here, where we make assertions on. Let me see if I can just show you. So right here, we check that that's the right first name and last initial. Well, what if we change the username, or the username and the password? Most likely that's going to change with it. So we could probably just change it here, but maybe we can do better. We'll revisit that a little later. So the other thing we have too is we have our sign in and sign. Let me go back here to here. So we have our sign in spec, and of course we don't have we have the global hook that's signing in, right? So, but we have this sign in spec. So we're signing in and then we're testing sign in. Well, if you're already signed in, we'll go to our application here. If you're already signed in and you go to the route, well, let me go here. There we go. So, I'm just gonna restart this so we can get into the. Okay, so we're signed into the application, right? So let's just say I was just wanting to modify that, but I guess I can't do that from here. So I'll do it from here. So we want to do sign in, right? Well, that's just going to reroute you home. Let's see if we can do. Sorry, just there we go. Let's just say we want to do sign up, right? Same thing. It just reroutes you to home. So what do we do? Well, we're gonna be needing this before each hook. Um, almost everywhere, right? There's gonna be a lot more. There's gonna be a lot more tests that need to set up routes. And, well, I mean not set up routes, but need to sign in. there's going to be a lot more that need to sign in than not sign in. So really, sign in, the sign in spec and the sign up spec are really just exceptions to that, right? So how do we do that? How do we handle that? Um, so there's and I've actually come across this problem before, and there's actually a couple of different ways that we could do it. We can either uh, let it ride, and then in a hook inside of those two specs, we could just log out before we start, and that's okay. But I think it might make more sense um, to actually just make an exception. So have put a conditional inside that hook to check to make sure that we're not in that sign in or sign up spec, right? So let's go ahead and build that so that we can apply this or be able to use these hooks that we set up. So let's see. If we go to this sign in, and we'll have some if statement here, like is suite not excluded, right? Is suite not excluded? And I'm kind of using like a double negative here, but that's what makes sense to me. All right. So if the suite is not included, then sign in. Okay. But we don't we don't have this defined, so we need to define that. So we're kind of working backwards here. So we have some excluded. Let's just have an array. So excluded specs. And we have two excluded specs. Sign in. Oh, sorry. Sign in and sign up. Okay. And then let's see. And then we'll have and then we'll define this. Is suite not excluded? Okay. And that's going to be something like this: excluded specs dot include, and then current spec name. Okay, so we have this current spec name. Now, how do we get this current spec name? Well, hang on a second. We got to put that up here. Current spec name. Now let's actually pause here for a moment and go here. All right. If I bring up the console, I can go to console, and I can do Cypress. Okay, and let me make this a little bigger so you guys can see. All right. All right. So now we've got, let's see. Yeah. So now we've got this Cypress Global, and this is actually really handy. There's lots of goodies in here. You can look through this, but most of this stuff is actually accessible in a synchronous way. One of those things that's in here is spec. That's what we're looking for, and it's this guy right here. And this actually has the absolute path to the spec, and then it has the name, which is what we need, and then it has a few other things. So we're going to go ahead and grab this name. So, oh, actually, let me go back. So the other thing too, you'll notice that it's home.spec.js. Well, at least in this case. So we just need the first piece without the spec JS. So we're going to go ahead and trim that off. So let's go ahead first and write a little utility here to trim, let's see, trim file extension. Spell that right? Okay, and then it has the file name. Okay, and then let's see, what did I do for that? I'm gonna cheat a little bit here and see if I can find that. Oh, okay, so I did return file name dot split, and it's by that dot and then dot shift. So it's taking that file name like sign in dot spec dot js, and it's giving me just the sign in piece by splitting this off from the beginning and then shifting this or getting this from that array that's created by the split. Okay, so now that I've got my little trim file extension thing here, right? Let's go ahead and make our, let's make a function called get current spec name, and that's going to take Cypress as the input, and it's going to, well, let's do this. Let's do const file name equals Cypress dot, what was it? Spec dot name. Cypress dot spec dot name. Okay, and we're going to return this trim file extension and file name. Okay, so so now we have our get current spec name, and we can say here get current spec name and pass in Cypress. Now Cypress is a global, right? So we don't necessarily have to pass this in, but I think it's a good habit to get into to pass in everything that you need or your dependencies. It's kind of like dependency injection. If you're not familiar with dependency injection, look it up. I definitely recommend it's a good thing to practice. But basically, we're making our functions testable and more reliable and less coupled when we're keeping things like dependency injection and separation of concerns, modularity, things like that in mind. And especially when, we're writing test code, right? Test code tests, other software, but who's testing our stuff, right? So since our stuff isn't really tested, we need to make sure that we're super high quality when we're writing stuff like this. Yeah, that's my philosophy. Now, oh, I forgot to say function here. All right, so is suite not excluded? Oh, I just got a little typo there. All right, cool. All right. Another thing too to keep in mind is obviously we can trim this down a lot. We don't have to create, these extra, functions if you don't want. Everybody has a different style. I think that by assigning these different variables, it sort of adds a bit of documentation, to our code. Which reminds me, if you go to here, so this is um, iheartjs.dev on GitHub. I'll actually just paste this in our chat here. But if you go here, and we're on the day 6 branch, you'll actually have all of this stuff um, in there. So you'll be able to kind of follow along that way. And of course, if you want to go backwards, I've got branches for each day, and you can kind of see how our suite evolves over that time. And I tried to keep things separate so that the solution isn't in the current day; it's in the next day. So that way, you don't cheat unless you want to. All right. So anyway, let's put that back. So now we've got our functions and our hook, and it's basically saying if we are not in these excluded specs, then go ahead and sign in. So let's give this a go. Now let's make sure that we test the positive, and of course I botched something here. Include is not a function. What did I do? Let's see, excluded specs dot include current spec name, get current spec name. I'm sure I messed up somewhere. Let's see. Current spec name. Sign in, sign up. Excluded specs. Oh, not include, it's includes. That's where I goofed. All right. Okay, cool. So the positive works. Let's work with the exclusion. Let's test that out. So we're going to go to sign in.
Is this thing on?
Be quiet, Google. All right. Sign in with username and password. All right, so as you can see, we've got our routes, but we don't have the sign in, and we're able to sign in like normal. In fact, if we go back to here, let's go ahead and just take that out. And all right, and as you can see, without that conditional in there, this actually fails because when we go to visit sign in, it just goes right home because we're already signed in. So let's go ahead and undo that, and we'll test. I keep doing that today. All right, and then let's go ahead and test out sign up. All right, everything works just fine there. Cool. All right. So now we've got our conditional. So now it's only signing in when we want to. So let's see. So So the other I mentioned before that the other option is to not do this conditional and just log out. Um, and that's perfectly fine. I think it's a good practice to give that a shot. I think it might seem, you know, straightforward, but there actually is a bit of thinking that's involved there. Like, in terms of how to implement it. Like for example, would we go through the front end to log out? Would we make an API call? How would we do that? And should we create, a custom command? And how would we go about doing that? Um, the other possibility is, we know that there is local storage and cookies that authenticate. If we wanted to log out, instead of making, actually, I don't even believe there is a logout API call. I think it's actually a function. So would we call the function in our application, at that level? Or do we want to just access local storage in the browser and just delete it and, and the cookies and then, um, you know, effectively forcing, a log out? So there's a couple of things to consider. I haven't actually gone and implemented that, but I think that in this scenario, but I think it's worth exploring if you want to learn more about Cypress. Okay, so all right, so we have that home spec, right? And we talked about um, we said before, how would we get this full name if the if this username changed, right? So if I logged in as, as myself, with my account, assuming that I had one, this might say Mike C here for the full name. And I could go in and just change it here, it's no big deal. But what if I don't have an opportunity to do that? Or what if I just want it to I want this value to just change with whatever the username is. So how do we do that? Well, if we go, let's see, let's go to auth. If you remember, this is our module for the sign in function that we made into a custom command. And let's go to this um, false value and change it to true. And what that's going to do is that's going to take this side.request that we're making to authenticate, and it's going to make it show up in here. And let's go to a spec that actually signs in. Okay, so here's our request. Let me bring up the console. Okay, so if we go to this request and we go to yield, and here is the, oops, and here is the body, and inside body is user. And inside user, we have a first name and we have a last name. It's not the last initial, and I don't think there is, we can look, but there's no value. There's no, full name value or anything like that with the first name and last initial that I see, but that's okay. We can work with this. All right. So, so let's go back to our code, change that back to false. And just to kind of, well, okay, let's look through this here, and see what this is doing. So this is really just for setting the message that appears in the log, this one right here in the command log, sign in and then signed in as. So that's what that does. This return statement is this whole thing. Okay, so it's returning this entire chain, or what's returned by this chain, right? And this is chained off psi, so this is going to be somewhat like a promise that um, then we can chain something else off of. So we have this sci.request, and then that is let's just say it's doing some stuff um, to the response, and then we're taking the body dot user from the response that we got back from um, request, and we're setting the local storage so that we can be authenticated just like the application does. And then we're setting some some stuff for logs, which we won't get into right now. But um, the point is that here we're not actually doing a return. So this user object that's right here, this body.user, is automatically returned. So if I don't return anything, what Cypress does is it just takes what was passed into it and it automatically returns it to the next thing that's chained off of that. So what's the point here? Well, we need to be able to store that user information so then we can read it in our test. And how we do that is through alias or .as, and then we can say user. So this takes that user object, which is really just this guy right here that's in the body of the response, and it assigns it to this user excuse me, this user alias. And I actually don't need to even do it there. I could even do it right here in the, where is it? In here. So I can take this sign in and I can do .as and then user. And that's essentially the same thing. So now we've created this user alias. Okay, and if we go back here, you can see this alias user is created. And if I click on that, oh, I guess it doesn't give that alias details. Sorry about that. That's the output of the sign in command. But anyway, we know what it is. So now how do we get it? How do we get access to that? Well, if we go to our test where we use it right here, we can actually do sci.get, and then how we reference an alias is with the @ sign and then the name of the alias. And if I do a .then, sometimes I have no idea what's being returned and I don't want to really look through the documentation or guess. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just put a debugger statement right in my .then, and it's super handy because now I can, did I save that? Okay. So then what'll happen is it'll go through that debugger. Am I in the wrong test? Oh, yeah, I'm in the wrong test. That's probably why it didn't refresh. And now, of course, I don't have DevTools open, so it didn't pause for the debug. There it is. Okay, I thought I did something wrong. Okay, so now we've got, so now where the debugger has paused and we're in this spot, and we have this user, I can hover over this and I can see that we have this value. I can also go here and I can actually reference it right in here. I didn't always know this, that you could do this. And so if you guys don't know, this is awesome. So now I can do user dot first name and see now I have access to this. So I know we're good. I know we have access to that inside here. So I can take that debugger statement out, and now we need to um, get the full name from the username and the last name. Well, how do we do that? Well, let's just create a function, and we'll call it get full name, and we'll say first name and last name. Oops. And how are we going to do this? We'll return the, I like to use template literals. So we're going to say first name, and then let's see, it'll be last name dot 0, I think that's it. So let's give that a try. So full name equals get full name user dot first name and user dot last name. Let's put that debugger statement in there and check it out. Okay, full name, Kaylin H. So we've got what we need. So now what we need to do is we're accessing this full name from the data object that's up here, but we don't have access to aliases outside of a test. So in Cypress, it just doesn't work. So what we're going to do is let's go ahead and what should we do? Let's do this. Let's just declare our data object in here. Data equals, and then we'll just do the same thing. Hold on a second. We don't even need, wait, do we? Username. We don't need this password. We can get rid of that. Okay, so let's actually just move it because we don't need it anywhere else. Let's put that here. And then full name we'll replace with this guy. Right here. And then this data object is only accessible inside the context of this then block. So we'll move all of these up here. Now you can do this like, let data nonsense. I don't really like doing that because that encourages side effects, right? You have one function that's affecting the value of outside its scope, and I don't like to do that. When you're looking at if you're looking at code and something like this is done, and it's like, okay, I've got this data object or this other variable, and it's declared at this top level scope, and I've got 600 lines of code here. It's like, what is actually manipulating this has access or is writing to this value, and it can get really messy. So I like to try to avoid that whenever possible. So I'm not going to do that. But you could if you wanted to. That's certainly another approach. But for here, we're gonna do this, and I think it's gonna work. Let's go ahead and save this. I'm actually going to do only so that it only runs this test. And I'll refresh this. Get out of our debugger. And here we go. So we have that Kalen H, and that's coming from this get user. Great. Awesome. So that works. Um, you can access aliases also from the this keyword. Now we can't do that here because we're using arrow functions. So let's try this. Let's change this to function. Okay, pre ES6. And let's do this, get rid of this then. Okay, and we'll do this dot user, this dot user, and let's save that. And we're still good. In fact, let me change that back. And we have a failure here, right? Cannot read property user of undefined, and that's because this is undefined when you use an arrow function. So that's why we have to use that traditional. So is that what you call it? Traditional? Maybe pre ES6? I don't know. I like the way this looks. It looks a little, I think it looks a little cleaner than the previous way, but it's up to you. But those are two different ways you can access that information. Another way, which we won't get into today, is actually, and this is in my day job, this is the way that I do it, is I actually have a plugin. So in our plugins, we have this index.js. Okay. It says here, this function is called when a project is opened or reopened. So, so this is essentially loaded every time we start Cypress. And what I do in here, because this is passing in config, I can actually, it says resolved Cypress config, but I can actually um, resolve it further. I guess I don't know how to better describe it, but basically what I could do is um, I could say in my I said I wasn't going to get into this, but I can't help myself. But basically, I could do something like this, where here's my Cypress JSON. I could have a full, I could have a full name like that, and then this would just be an empty string. And then what I would do here is I would, I would go to our plugin, and I would have some kind of logic that essentially takes in the config. So now I have the username and the password. I'd go through the API, get that user object just like I'm doing in the test, and set up the full name, right? Uh, and then that way, essentially, what happens is, and if I do return, whatever that config is, new config, right? So I have some kind of function that resolves it and sets that full name. Then when I go back into my test, if we go back to, where was it, home, then I can do cypress.env and full name, just like that. And then I can switch this back to arrow function if I so please, right? And in fact, I can even then move this back up here like we had before. Okay. Um, yeah. In my case, I do that. I use a plugin because I have several different things that I need to kind of resolve. Too much for this video to really get into, but that's just another way to go about generating that full name. So let's see, what else did we task you with? I think that's pretty much it. Um, see, I'm just going through my notes here. Talked about the alias and arrow functions. Yeah, that's it. That's all she wrote. So now at the end of it, kind of recap, we have 4 different tests for our real world application. And they're nice and clean because we are pulling things out that, uh, you know, that, uh, that repeat code basically. And we have, a couple different sort of strategies to do that. One was creating the custom commands, and then we also used global hooks. Another thing that we're doing as well is we're grabbing all the routes, getting control over our network requests so that our tests are more reliable. You can also use fixtures. I don't believe I've gone through that in this workshop, but um, you can also take your data that you use to say you're setting up, you're doing some data setup. You can put the payloads for those requests into fixture to further keep things clean and manageable. We talked about the support module, um, sort of architecture, I guess, and we're making use of uh, of of commands. Talked about that. That's pretty much it. And I guess the other thing too is we're going through the UI to sign in, but then for every other test, we're not going through the UI. We're going through the API to authenticate, and that further keeps things clean and manageable, and of course more reliable and performant too, because it takes longer to go through the UI than it does through the backend. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for listening and participating. It's been fun. Um, yeah, feel free to go through the recordings to uh, get caught up. And then, like I said, this is certainly not the end. Um, there'll be more content